Hello, hola, and what's up? Welcome and welcome back to the Hope Chase podcast. I am Angie and I am your host. Thank you so much for listening. This is episode 17. So grab a coffee, a tea, a snack, and turn your volume up because for the next half an hour or so, I'm going to share with you an experience that has been happening over the last several days. What the fuck do I do when I recognize I am thinking the way I used to? When old thought patterns, old behaviors pop up, what the fuck do I do about it? And if this is the first time you are listening to the Hope Chase podcast, thank you so much and welcome. I'm Angie and I was a heroin addict for almost 20 years. Been through some shit. And now I have a podcast and we talk all about it. We talk about my addiction, my recovery, my healing. So welcome and thanks for joining the Hope Chase today. It can be so frustrating. You're just minding your own business, going through your day, having a great old day, and all of a sudden, some old thinking patterns pop into your brain. All of a sudden, you're forced to deal with this situation that you have no control over, and you realize your old thoughts come back, some old behaviors come back, and it's fucking frustrating and it's annoying. How do you deal with that? How are you supposed to shake that shit off and move on? Well, just so happens I'm dealing with that right now and have been for the last few days. So let's talk about it. There's an Einstein quote that I love that says, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that created them." And this is the whole thing, right? You have to change the way you think in order to heal. You cannot expect to grow. You cannot expect to change anything without changing the way you think, without changing the way you react to things, the way your subconscious thinks about things, your programming, the way you think about every single little thing. You have to change all that. So this week, I have had to deal with some things that have brought up some old behaviors, some old patterns, old habits, where I caught myself thinking the worst, caught myself justifying or making excuses or almost expecting something to not work out. It's a situation that I don't have much control over. It's a situation where I am having to rely on someone else. So it doesn't only include me. And it's much fucking easier to move on from these things when it's only me, when I know that I have control over the situation and I know that I can change the way I feel, I can change the outcome, I can switch my mindset. But in this situation, thank God Mercury retrograde was over yesterday. So hopefully things will be evening out. But I realized that my brain was kind of going to the negative. I caught myself, which is the good thing. However, it was more difficult for me to shake it off. And I started to wonder almost immediately, am I doing something wrong? What am I doing wrong? Why am I feeling like this? I thought I moved past this already. So the first thing to do, if you realize old thinking patterns or old behaviors are popping up, is to recognize that you're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. The world isn't out to get you. Stop beating yourself up. And this is why I constantly say that it's not all butterflies and rainbows all the time. It's not that you get to a certain threshold of healing and all of a sudden everything is phenomenal. Things fucking happen. And not only is it incredibly important to realize that we don't have control over everything, But it's more important to realize that that is okay. And how the hell are we supposed to accept whatever the fuck happens when we sincerely don't have control over the outcome? The serenity prayer. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. If you go to meetings, you know that you say this every single time before a meeting ends. But I mean, do you really ever think about the words? Like, what does it mean? Now, this is what I'm talking about. When I catch myself thinking like I used to think, having bad thoughts or negative feelings, that I can change that. I can change that. I can change the way I feel. I have the ability to change that. So in the serenity prayer, the courage to change the things I can. You can change the way you feel. You can change the way you think. And the wisdom to know the difference. Knowing the difference between things you can and cannot change might sound easy. How many times have I tried to control every single aspect of every single fucking situation of my life, all the while knowing that I can't physically do that, but still trying? So I need to accept the fact that it's my fault. It's my fault that I'm having negative thoughts. It's my fault that I feel negatively. I'm frustrated. I'm aggravated. Owning that and realizing that if I continue to feel that way, more shit's going to go wrong. More shit's not going to happen the way I want it to happen, because the outside world is just a mirror of what we feel on the inside. So once I recognize what I can and cannot change, I can change the way I think and feel. I can't change how something is going to end. I can't change the timing. I can't change the outcome. The most important thing is awareness. It's being aware of when that happens. And the more that you heal and the more that you do this work on yourself, the easier it is to recognize in the moment. The easier it is to not allow it to ruin long extended periods of time, like days or even weeks of your time. When something didn't necessarily go according to how I wanted it to go, initially I thought, of course. Initially, I had that old thought, that old thinking resurface and say, of course it didn't work out. Of course it didn't. Why would it? It never does. And that was the minute I realized, Ange, shut up. Shut up. It's incredibly hard to change your thinking in the moment because your thoughts influence your feelings, and then your feelings influence your behaviors. So if you're having these thoughts on a subconscious level, it's affecting your feelings, and you are probably not aware of it. So as a result of me thinking this, I would automatically, for example, start to feel aggravated or automatically start to be quick tempered or frustrated at little things that are going on around me in my physical space. So as time has gone by and as I've done work on myself, it is easier to recognize these thoughts in the moment, because a lot of times when I talk about these thoughts, it's just a description of the thought that I'm having. So it can be difficult to recognize because it's an automatic subconscious thing that happens. And that's what we're trying to heal. That's what I'm trying to move on from, essentially. So awareness is the first step. I became aware of what I was thinking in the moment. Whereas if you are just starting to do the work or not used to this process, then your awareness is probably not as fine tuned. And as a result, you'll be thinking these things without realizing it. And then it's affecting your feelings. So you'll probably notice the feelings first. you'll notice that you're frustrated, you're aggravated, or however it manifests, however the feeling manifests for you. You'll probably think, why am I so frustrated? Why am I flipping out over the littlest things? What the fuck is going on? Without that awareness of these thoughts that you're actually having, these thoughts that are causing or affecting or influencing these feelings. But as your awareness fine tunes, as you do this work on yourself, your awareness grows and you start to be able to identify these thoughts in the moment. I recognize I was thinking negatively. And I also recognized that I was getting aggravated at little things around me in my physical reality. And I realized it's because I do not have control over the outcome. I am having to rely on an outside source to kind of help me in getting something accomplished because I'm no good at that. I've already talked about I hate having to rely on outside sources. I would much rather do everything myself. I reassured myself it's going to work out. And it's going to fucking work out. Everything works out. And then I started to think, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Like, what is the purpose? As I talked about briefly in the past, I do recognize that our thoughts create our reality because, as I just said, our thoughts create our feelings create our behavior, and it's this cycle that creates our reality. So if I am thinking negatively, if I am expecting the worst, then of course the worst, the negative is going to happen. So I was blaming myself for it not working out the way I wanted to. What could be the purpose behind this situation not necessarily working out the way I wanted it to? Well, the purpose is probably me having to practice dealing with these situations. These situations are going to come up in life. You can't do everything yourself 100% of the time. There are going to be times, Ange, where you're going to have to rely on an outside source and you're going to have to trust that it's going to work out. So, this situation is my practice, is me taking the time to practice trusting that it's going to work out the way it's supposed to work out. I know that it's going to work out. I know that I'm going to get what I want. How that actually happens is not in my control. And I'm having to trust in an outside source. So this whole situation is simply kind of a test. It is an opportunity for me to practice putting my trust, relying on an outside source to get something done. But I want to say, just because you know the purpose or the reason behind something does not make it any fucking easier to deal with. It gets easier to recognize these patterns when they happen so that you can reframe them, look at a situation, understand the purpose behind it, and trust that it's going to work out. A huge piece of being able to shake this shit off is trusting and believing. If you don't trust that it's going to work out, if you don't really truly believe that it's going to work out, none of this shit is going to work. You are not going to be able to shake this shit off. And if you're just saying it, if you are just kind of lying to yourself, trying to make yourself believe, it's not going to work. You have to inherently, truly trust and believe that it's going to work out. And you want to know how I do that? How do I know? I know that it's going to work out because it always fucking has. Every single situation, no matter how bad or how much control or lack of control I had over any given situation, it has always fucking worked out. So I can 100% believe and trust that it's going to work out all of the time. It might be a little bit difficult sometimes to remember that it's going to work out, but I truly and honestly am able to trust and believe because it always has. And also, there is gratitude. Whenever I find myself in a situation where I'm recognizing old thought patterns popping up in any given moment, usually gratitude will help me get the fuck out of that funk, will help me to shake that shit off. And gratitude is kind of difficult to feel if you're stuck in this aggravated, frustrated, annoyed mood. These feelings, they kind of block any form of gratitude. I mean, even in this situation where my old thinking popped up, my life is so much different than it was just 2 years ago. I can immediately think, Ange, I'm not that person. My life has changed so much, not so much in the outside, but in the inside. I am a completely different person. It feels so gross because I'm not that person anymore. Where it used to feel so normal to be negative all the time. That was like my thing. Something else I do when I realize I am thinking old thoughts or different shits popping up from my past, I try to just focus on something else. Get out of that energy, focus my energy on something else that I know I enjoy doing. Try to forget thinking about it in the moment because I don't want to get stuck in that negativity. Awareness is a big part of it, but what is the awareness worth if you're not really knowing what to do with it? I'll try to shake it off. I'll go outside. I'll take Indy for a walk. I'll meditate. I will do something else that I know is going to clear my brain, help me to stop thinking about it in the moment, and realize that it is really actually going to work out. And I really don't have much to worry about. Whatever we focus on grows. Where our attention goes, our energy flows. I don't know if you've heard that before. It's kind of like a law of attraction saying, but it's true. And as soon as I had this negative thought, I thought, oh shit. I got scared. I was like, uh-oh. That means that it's not going to work out because me thinking this way is going to create a negative outcome. It's not going to work out now because I had this negative thought. And I got scared that I was affecting it in that way. Well, you can choose to focus on something else. So just walk away from it, shake it off, do something else. I went outside, took Indy for a walk, meditate, get that shit off my brain, focus on something else, get my energy to something else that's not negative. And that gives me the time to realize that it's going to fucking work out. Calm the fuck down, Ange. It's going to work out. You don't have control over everything. Calm the fuck down. So no matter what gets thrown your way, no matter what hiccups or speed bumps are in your road, you can always rely on the fact that it's going to work out. How it's going to get there is not necessarily up to you. And it does get easier and easier and easier to think this way. It takes practice. And that's all that this situation is for me. It is an opportunity to practice my patience and my trust and my belief that it's going to work out, accepting the fact that I don't have control over everything, and being fucking grateful for the shit that I do have control over. The fact that I am in a completely different place and I don't feel like that all the time anymore. It's a huge reminder of how far that I have come. That's all. That's all I have to say about this for today. I hope it made sense. I hope you could follow along. I hope that it doesn't seem redundant. I'm recording this episode and realizing maybe am I repeating myself? I honestly don't think, however, that it's possible to say some of these things too many times. And if you're hearing it, if you're hearing any of these messages, if you are listening to this today, that means that you need to hear one of these messages or all of these messages. So I leave you with that, and that's all I have to say. So thank you so much for listening and joining the Hope Chase today. Don't forget to follow along on social media on the interwebs at the Hope Chase Pod on both TikTok and Instagram, at the Hope Chase on YouTube, and also you might notice there is a support this podcast button that you can click on, where you can now support this podcast and the continued growth and success of the Hope Chase, help supply the necessary equipment, and just support our journey here. And please follow along from whatever podcast platform you are listening from. Leave a rating and a review to help this podcast get noticed by the bigger platforms out there. And I think that's it for social media. So thank you for joining the Hope Chase with me today. This is the Hope Chase podcast. I am Angie, and welcome to the shit show. See you next time.